Hi, I'm Aubrey Kavanaugh. I'm joined this morning by Shirley Marsh. We're here with No Kill in Motion, and today we are going to be talking about dogs who enter shelters normal and then become behavior cases. We have increasing issues with particularly dogs that are entering shelters and they're being labeled as a public safety risk, as aggressive. I've even seen reports that use the phrase high arousal, and then those dogs are being destroyed. But on the flip side, we know that there are dogs that have stayed in shelters for a really long time, sometimes as much as a year or more, and they still get adopted out to a great home. And of course, that's not ideal to have a dog in a shelter environment that long. But I guess the point is that just because a dog has been in a shelter a while doesn't mean that that dog is going to develop into a behavior case. So Shirley, let's get into this. I think that I'm just going to lead off with one short statement for me and then get your input. I feel like destroying dogs for behavior is the new version of destroying animals because they're unadoptable. For years, we had a thing where if animals got adopted, they must have been great. If they didn't get adopted and they had been there a long time, then they were just determined to be unadoptable and then they were destroyed. And I think where we are now is, as public expectations have become higher, we have a situation where they're using the word behavior as the new version of unadoptable. So if a dog has been in there a while and is not doing well in their environment, oh, well, it's a behavior case. And so now we need to destroy that dog. What do you think about that?
I agree with you. I think that's definitely become more true as numbers of killings in shelters have decreased. I think shelters are looking for new ways to justify killings. And, it's so hard. We don't, I think, talk about this enough, but it is so hard on dogs and cats entering shelters. And sorry.
Your dog agrees. Your dog is back there going, yeah, power to the paw.
It's very hard on them. Cats tend to respond by getting sick. Dogs tend to respond by going, quote unquote, kennel crazy. It's a very stressful environment. And when you have dogs that are, in the shelter for a year or whatever, as we often see appeals on social media from places saying this dog's waited a year. That's when I say, think outside the box, do some things that you haven't done before. There is nothing wrong, in my mind, with giving a dog away for free. Why not get that dog a home by making that dog the spotlight dog? That dog is in the lobby when people come in. That dog is adoption fee waived. That dog comes with, obedience training. Get somebody to sponsor, obedience training or whatever. Just do things that you haven't done, because just sitting there and saying, well, we don't have a home and he's really getting, quote unquote, reactive or whatever. Of course, those are the normal things that are going to happen with a dog. And we don't want to see a dog killed for being normal.
Right. I agree with you completely. I was thinking about this morning before we started talking. Shelters often lament the fact that people will adopt a dog and then expect that dog to be perfectly behaved from day one. And they talk about decompression and they talk about giving the dog some time to adjust. So there's this expectation on the part of the public that they're not going to expect the dog to be perfect the day the dog walks out the shelter. Well, then why are shelters expecting dogs to be perfect the way they come into a very foreign environment? I think that if you have a dog that comes into a shelter that adapts pretty quickly and does well in the shelter, that's a plus. I think that should be considered the exception to the norm, because, we know, as Karen DeLisa said before, the way dogs behave in shelters say way more about the shelter than about the dog. It's a completely foreign environment, whether that dog lived in a loving home and lived inside and slept on the bed, or the dog lived outside all the time but was still used to interacting with certain people. You bring that dog inside a shelter environment with the sounds, the smells, the energy, all sorts of other dogs. and we can't expect them to behave perfectly from day one. And some dogs do more poorly in that environment than others, which is why I think that for all dogs entering shelters, there should be, in addition to like vaccination on intake, there should be a protocol, and there should be some type of plan set up for each dog, like you would set up a medical care plan. There should be a behavior plan about, okay, where should this dog be housed? Can this dog be in a play group? Does this dog just need to be walked by himself because he doesn't do well in a play group? Okay, so he's pacing in his kennel. Well, how can we avoid having that happen? I mean, there's so many ideas and so many progressive things happening to help these dogs that I just think that simply labeling them as behavior and destroying them as a cop-out. We've been getting more kennel cards in Huntsville recently just because we've had a really big rise in the number of behavior dogs being destroyed. And some of these kennel cards are just, they're heartbreaking. There was one dog that was 9 months old, and when it was in the kennel, a kennel worker came in the kennel, and the dog mouthed the person's arm. Didn't bite it, but put his mouth on her arm. I mean, for all we know, he was either trying to play or he was trying to communicate, but nobody got hurt, but yet this dog was destroyed. I saw a kennel card this morning I was looking at. A dog was found running loose near the shelter, had a plastic container of some sort around his head, like maybe he had stuck his head into it, trying to drink or eat something, got stuck. So they were able to trap the dog, got him to the shelter, managed to get the thing off his head. But then after that, in the ensuing days, he was really frustrated, and the staff had trouble handling him, and he didn't get along with other dogs. Well, it just begs the question, well, what were they trying to do to gain trust with the dog who had been through a traumatic experience? I just feel like it's a cop-out. And having said that, and we've talked about this before, there are dogs that really are genuinely dangerous. They're cognitively impaired, and their level of unpredictability is such that we cannot have them adopted out in the community. But like we've seen and talked about time again, that's like a 1% to 2% range. Some dogs just are not safe, but the vast majority are. And I just have a real problem with dogs being destroyed in shelters for what I consider to be fear-based behaviors and for behavior created by the shelter environment itself.
Yes, definitely. And you know, another thing I would add to this equation is these dogs, these long-term dogs, these dogs that are going quote unquote kennel crazy, those are the prime dogs that should be sent to rescues. Instead of letting rescues text you or email you and say, we've looked through your website, we want, you know, fluffy white dog, we want cute adorable puppy, and we want long-haired kitty. How about we tell you which dogs are available for rescue? We're not holding cute and fluffy for you, but this dog who is pacing in the kennel, or who is mouthing somebody when they come in because they're desperate for attention, this dog is available for rescue. We need to get him out ASAP. I just think the way that, you know, holding dogs for rescues that are, when they're turning away adopters, and then they have these dogs that they say, well, we can't keep them alive because, you know, they're suffering in the shelter environment. That's on the shelter to do better. And I think rearranging the relationship with rescues could help with that.
I agree completely. And I think you said it really well a couple of conversations ago. You said that the kind of dogs we're talking about are the ones that really need rescue, as opposed to the other ones that the public would probably adopt. And because we know that most of these dogs behave completely differently once we get them out of the building, it's at least worth having a rescue pull the dog, take the dog to their facility where they may get more enrichment, more interaction, or even put them in a foster home and see how they do. I don't think that we can presume that because a dog does poorly in a traditional kennel environment of a shelter, that means that dog will be a problem for the rescue group. And you're right. I mean, those are the dogs that, to me, most need rescue. All right. Well, thanks for your insight on this, Shirley. I am going to share, when we share this, I'll share a link to a blog that I wrote really out of frustration. And it's called I Was a Good Dog. And it's written from the perspective of a dog who comes into a shelter and who's just frustrated and is trying to communicate, and that dog doesn't make it out. Again, born of frustration, but there's a reason why I wrote it, and I'll share the link to the blog. All right, this has been No Kill in Motion. I'm here with Shirley Marsh of Yes Biscuit. I'm Aubrey Kavanaugh. I'm with Pause for Change and No Kill Huntsville, and we'll see you next time.